Jai Bhim and Namo Buddhaya to all of you who are joining today. From a long time, some of us have been contemplating about whether we can do something on Buddhist philosophy. And as you know, that the Buddhist philosophy is a very vast domain. And when we think about the Buddhist philosophy, we cannot but think about the vast body of the philosophical writings that are left behind by the great Buddhist philosophers, starting from the Buddha. The Tripitaka itself is a very vast ocean of knowledge, and then there were a lot of prominent philosophers who have looked into various domains of the Buddhist philosophy. What I'm going to do in the course of 10 weeks, hopefully, because we cannot cover everything of Buddhist philosophy in 10 weeks, 10 sessions, but I will try to maximize our time in terms of what best we can do in the coming 10 weeks. So I have prepared a kind of a plan for us that we are going to walk through in the coming 10 sessions. And I hope that our sessions will be very interactive, and they will not just be about philosophizing, as we are going to see that, they are not just about, speculative ideas, because the Buddha was against the speculative ideas, as we know from a lot of the suttas. But of course, there is the great interest, growing interest in Buddhist philosophy worldwide, particularly in the West and also increasingly in the Chinese speaking world. So I think it's but obvious for us to look into Buddhist philosophy from various angles. So I'm going to share my first lesson as a presentation. Okay. So what I'm going to begin today, because is something that has to do with what we can term as metaphysics as ethics. And some of you who might have looked into a philosophy a little bit, traditionally in the Western philosophy, the philosophy is classified in terms of ethics, metaphysics, logics, politics, and epistemology. So I'm not going to go into this lot of words. I'm going to talk about these two words. Metaphysics is about, thinking about the origin of the world, what is the reality of the world as it is, and ethics is about how we live in the world. And one of the very prominent Buddhist philosopher who has written a very beautiful book on Indian Buddhist philosophy, Amber Carpenter. She has framed the Buddhist philosophy as metaphysics as ethics. And one of the prominent questions that we all the time look into is this: why Buddhist philosophy begins with suffering? So this is, I think, very important. Uh, you know, uh, a kind of a hypothesis to explain why Buddhist philosophy begins with suffering. And broadly, what we're going to look at is self, suffering, consciousness, compassion, and freedom. So let's begin with our journey. So for today, our central question will be, why do human beings suffer even when life improves? And I think this is a very important question that, the inquiry should begin with. Sometimes everything is going on well with us. We are financially well off. Sometimes we are doing very well. But, suddenly we see that even when our life is improving, in terms of the material sort of developments, in terms of many developments, this question is very important. And today in this session, this is going to be a keystone of our session today. Why do human beings suffer even when life improves? So if you are using a notebook or any sort of a recording device, I would like to request you to write down this question in your notebook, because this is the most important question that is very interesting. And I'm going to pause here. I'm going to ask all of you, what do you think about this question? Because I think this is a very important question. So if you have any ideas, why do we suffer even when everything is going on well with us? I don't want our sessions to be just, one way. I would like you to, participate as much as you can. So anyone would like to volunteer reflecting on this question? That, even if, yes, you can speak. We suffer when our expectations are not met. Okay, that's a good point. Anybody has anything to say on this? Because you see, even if we are successful, imagine a person who is educated, having, his financial security, respected, maybe married, healthy, socially connected. Yet we see around us that, people are very anxious, they are restless, dissatisfied, fearful, unable to rest. Why is that? Yes, Dheeraj.
Unwanted.
Yes,
Uh,
Dheeraj, please.
okay.
So it's a gap between reality and expectation. The wider the gap, the more suffering as per the gap.
That's a very good point. There is a wide gap between what we expect and what is the reality, right? Anyone? Why do we,
Yes,
despite of, yes,
unwanted expectations they keep,
unwanted
and they are not ready to face the changes. Get it? Their expectations are high, but
yes,
whatever is coming to them, they want that everything
mm,
should go smoothly.
right, right.
They
So
want that, and if any disturbance or anything is what is not happening as per their expectation, so
okay,
that is the suffering there.
okay. That's a very good one, Arvind bhai. Manish ji, you wanted to say something?
But sir, I will go with the same thoughts,
Huh,
experiences, and expectations.
huh,
So, as other colleagues also shared that expectations are not, alignment with the reality.
hmm.
So that is again the same thought I have. See,
Right,
what
right,
we
right.
expect and if we not fulfill, or we having some, bad experience, we cannot able to turn it into a good experiences. Then maybe this we
Hmm.
suffer.
Yes. That's a good point. And even if you, for instance, if we imagine a situation where everything is well, going on well, we have no stress, no expectations, no pressures from the society. Even then, do you think that the problem of suffering will be gone? Like, I think this is a very important question that we are looking into, and this is the question, as I told you, that is going to lead us, because this is going to be only, we are going to inquire, because philosophizing is all about inquiry into not only the reality but also in our minds, in our inquiry into our experiences. So, the more we think about, instead of just be accepting anything passively because somebody is saying that, I would like to see that we all try to think through, all try to inquire into our experiences, into reality. So, somebody's saying we are unable to accept the present situation. That's true that, sometimes, we expect something happens, and we are not ready to accept the situation. So, any other reflections? Please feel free to reflect. I think this is very helpful exercise, because unless we engage with the question,
Whatever man gets, he is not satisfied with that. That's why I think.
so whatever we get, we are
Yeah,
not satisfied, right? There is
we
no
want
end to.
more. Yeah, we want more again and again. So satisfaction is not there.
Right. So you are saying that we want more and more.
Expectations,
That's why.
no, sir. Actually, expectations are never ending.
Okay, expectations are never
Hmm.
ending. So there is
Yeah,
no end to our suffering, right?
yeah.
So can we say that because
No,
our
no,
uh,
no. That we can. No. By this thing, vipassana and this way, when we have that, I think that at that time we will be stable. I think.
okay, you are saying that we should be stable, right? Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Any other reflection? Any other personal thing? You can reflect on your personal thing as well. Not a problem.
In fact, what happens? The people they are ready. They are having the higher expectation,
Okay.
but efforts to achieve that is not up to that level.
Right. Hmm. So, the another question that flows from our discussion here, do you think that it's just true that some people are unhappy and some people are happy, or what do you think about this? Why does suffering persist even when conditions improve? It's for all, or it's just for few people, or is it just me that I am suffering and rest of you are not suffering, or what is the nature of it? Okay, so these are all the questions that we are going to look into. Let me take you to the presentation. So we begin with this question: why do human beings suffer even when life improves? And I said that this is a very important question that we have to bear in mind. And I told you also to note this question down on your whatever recording devices that we use. Why do we suffer even when life improves? So you see, what I'm going to do, of course, in a very engaging and reflecting way with as a class, that we are going to look at this course not as a belief system. So it is not going to be a course in belief. We are not asking people to accept Buddhist doctrine as faith. So that term should be clear, that we are not going to look into the course as accepting Dhamma as it is. We are going to accept it after inquiry. This is not, of course, a ritual course. We are not going to conduct anything to any devotional practice or cultural identity. What I term this course as is a sometime some sort of a thinking sort of a course. So we are going to think a lot. We are going to think a lot, and we will study Buddhism as a rigorous philosophy of experience, suffering, and freedom. So the aim of this course is to learn how Buddhist philosophy trains us to see clearly. So that is going to be the course, the aim of the course. So these are, of course, a few learning goals that I have set for all of us. 1 minute. So, understand why Buddhism begins with suffering, doesn't, end with suffering. It begins with suffering, and explain metaphysics as ethics in simple language. And we are going to see how view shapes desire, action, character, and life. Then the fourth goal is to distinguish pain, emotional suffering, existential suffering, metaphysical suffering, and of course, social suffering, and prepare for lesson 2, the investigation of self. So that is going to be our second session. So, as we were talking about a successful, unhappy person, he has education, or he or she has education, money, social respect, family, health, connection, but still feels anxious, restless, dissatisfied, fearful, unable to rest. So, what exactly is wrong when everything seems right? This is the question for all of us. This is the question. We have a security, we have certain achievements, we are, even then we are restless, and this is the question that, has we all have to face. So what was the Buddha's response? What happens when we suffer? And I think that's, we will have a little bit of discussion on that. So the ordinary response when the suffering appears, we seek more security. We try to find security in money, in status, in relationships, and in power. This is what is an ordinary reply. This is what is an ordinary response when we face suffering. We think that, if we have more money, we will suffer less. If we think that if we have more status, we will suffer less. If we think that we have successful relationships, we will not suffer. If we have more power, then we think that, the suffering will just disappear. But Buddha's response is not like that. When suffering appears, the Buddha investigates reality itself. So this is going to be, our format. When suffering comes, the normal temporary response, ordinary response is more security and temporary relief. But then when we look at the suffering from the Buddha's point of view, whenever suffering arises, we inquire into the suffering and we transform ourselves. So I'm going to, we will reflect on this a little bit before we go on. So what do you think about, what I just talked about, the ordinary response and the Buddha's response. Is it
Uh,
true? Is it true whatever I said about whenever we encounter suffering, what happens? What do we do? What is our general response? Yes, Arvindji.
Generally, what happens is that what are our expectations? When we try to achieve that, surely we will come out with some problems. When we have that problems, and the basic one quotation I just remember, solving the problems and coming out of that problem, that is a success. So people generally what happens, they have that expectation, and when they don't, they try for that. If they got some problems, then uh, they divide them, distract their thinking. So
Right.
that way it has happened.
Right. No, what is our general response whenever, look, for example, if some people suffer, they resort to certain drugs, they resort to certain addictions. They have this what we say escape mechanisms. Sometimes in psychological language, there's a coping mechanisms, but sometimes they are not. Of course, they don't lead to they might lead to the a temporary suppression of the suffering, but this suffering persists. So what do we do when we suffer, when we encounter suffering? What is our general response? So do we enter into an inquiry into why we suffer, or we want to bend our minds towards more money, more power, seeking relationships, seeking a status? What is our general response? I think there are two trajectories. And it's true for all of us because we don't know how to respond to the suffering. We don't know how to deal with the suffering. So I think this investigation into why we suffer, what is the nature of the suffering, is the beginning of the philosophical inquiry. Whenever we use the word philosophy in a Buddhist term, it's very deep connotation. It's not just speculative. It's grounded in our day-to-day life. It's grounded in our tangible experiences. I think that is the beauty when we look at, Buddhism or Buddhist philosophy, that it's not grounded in some kind of an abstract or some kind of a speculative sort of an idea, but it's really looking into what is happening with me right now. It is really looking into what is happening in my mind right now. It's really looking into what is happening in my body right now. It's really looking into what is happening in my in terms of the emotions. So I think this is a very, very important discussion when we think about the Buddhist philosophy. I'm going to go back to my presentation. Can you see my presentation?
Screenshot.
Only screenshot. Wait. These new features in Zoom are really. Now this is there. Okay.
And now
So
it is over.
yes. So this is what we were looking at, the ordinary response and what is the Buddha's response. So whenever suffering appears, the Buddha investigates reality itself. So, there are these traditional four encounters. We don't have to take them as they might have really happened to the Buddha, but let's take them as a kind of, philosophical shocks in terms of the existential shocks that we all get, in terms of the Buddha's four encounters. Let's not take them the episodes in the history, but let's take them as the philosophical devices. So, the four encounters of the Buddha. We all know the four encounters of the Buddha, right? So you see the old age, the Buddha, of course, saw an old man, a sick person, he saw a dead body, and then he saw a renunciate. So these are not just kind of a mythic decorations, they are philosophical shocks. And all of us, at some point of time in our lives, we encounter these philosophical shocks. Everything is going on well with us. Suddenly we discover some gray hair. We, some something in our body is going wrong, some kind of a sickness taking over us, and a lot of things happen with us. But basically, these four encounters are, we all face them. And they are not just kind of a mythical sort of a decorations. We have to look at them as kind of a philosophical shocks. So when Siddharth saw the reality of this, this life, so what did Siddharth see? He saw that some people become old, sick, and die. It's not some people. We all get old and we all, fall sick. We all eventually die. This is what happens. So the Buddha saw something very important, that he didn't look at, he didn't want to, find solace in status, power, in money, and in relationship. This is what the Buddha saw. He saw that, he didn't, after encountering this, the facts of life, the Buddha didn't live in the palace. The Buddha saw very deeply all conditioned life is vulnerable to change, loss, and dependence. So whatever there is in the world, it's all conditioned life, whatever is conditioned is vulnerable to change, loss, and dependence. And figuratively, as I wrote here, the palace cannot solve a structural problem. So, this suffering that we encounter all the time, even when everything is going on well, it's not our personal problem. It's a structural problem. I'm going to show you, it's much more deeper than the personal problem. So Buddha's going back to the palace was not the solution to the structural problem, to the existential problem. So you see, the Buddha didn't respond in a usual way. He didn't go back to the palace to enjoy the luxury of life, to escape from the sufferings that he encountered. He didn't indulge into more, drinking, or more sensuality, or more of, escape, more status. He thought very deeply. He thought very, very deeply in those terms, and he realized the palace cannot solve a structural problem. So just to go ahead, so what is philosophy here? Because our topic is about Buddhist philosophy, so we have to, of course, give justification to why we are studying the philosophy here. So what is philosophy here? It's not abstraction. So whatever we are discussing, it is not detached from our day-to-day experience. It's not, away from how we live our lives. So the first point that I would like to make here in terms of, when we are studying philosophy or the Buddhist philosophy per se, is it is not an abstraction. It is not a game of terms detached from life. We are not going to speculate on the reality of the existence, or on the speculative theory as to how the world came into existence, not theories. We are not going to deal with abstractions. We are going to look at a practice of inquiry. It is not a doctrine. We are not going to memorize and repeat the terms like these are the Four Noble Truths, these are eight wings of the Noble Eightfold Path. We are not going to do that. What we are going to do, our aim in this particular course is to have a practice of inquiry. And we are not just going to have the random inquiry. We are going to have a disciplined way to understand how life goes wrong and how it can be transformed. So philosophy begins when life itself becomes a question. I think that's another thing that, we have to bear in mind. So Buddhist philosophy doesn't, begin in abstraction. It doesn't begin in doctrine. We are not going to mug up a lot of lists, like 5 of these, 10 of that. We are not going to do that. What we are going to do as a Buddhist philosophizing on reality, we are not going to, to indulge into abstraction or doctrine. We are going to look at a practice of inquiry in a disciplined way to understand how life goes wrong and how it can be transformed. In other words, philosophy begins when life itself becomes a question. And the biggest question is, why do we suffer? Why do I suffer? Why do the other beings suffer? So this is the point where our philosophizing begins, where the Buddhist philosophizing begins. So, of course, some of those who have joined today, they come from the medical field. And we know that the Buddha looked into this everything in terms of the medical model, diagnosis, cause, cure, and treatment. And if we map that with the Buddhist path, suffering, craving, cessation, and path. That is what the Buddha taught. Dukkha, dukkha samudaya, dukkha nirodha, and dukkha nirodha gamini patipada. So the Four Noble Truths, as we know, that the first noble truth, of course, begins with this is suffering. The Buddha doesn't say that I am suffering or you are suffering. He says this is suffering. There is suffering. And he says this is the cause. This can cease. This is the path. So this is the Four Noble Truth as method, and as we go deep into our classes, a lot of things are going to become very clear. So of course, we observe, we diagnose, and we transform. So that is our philosophical inquiry. That is how the Buddhist philosophical inquiry begins, with the reality of the life, that we suffer. We are restless. We are not satisfied. So, the Buddhist philosophy begins, as it were, with observation, with diagnosis, and transformation. So, I was referring to this book, very interesting book, and what Professor Carpenter says is makes a very interesting point in a book, and her book is subtitled as Metaphysics as Ethics, where she says how we understand reality shapes how we live. So, if our understanding of reality is not according to quote unquote reality, and we live according to that, and that's how we live based on our understanding of the reality. Therefore, it's very important for us to, understand the reality of life. And the more we understand the reality of life, it shapes how we live. And how we live determines, how much we suffer. So this is a very interesting sort of a logical sort of a thread that we can begin to see. So metaphysics, as I said, is all about what is real, what is the self, what is change, what is dependence. And ethics is about how should I live, what should I desire, how should I act, what kind of person should I become. And in Buddhism, metaphysics is ethics. So this is the center chain that we will be looking into. That the way we look at the world, our vision creates the desire, our desire leads to action, our repeated action leads to our character, and our when something is formed up in our being, that's the way we live. So change the view and the whole change can change. That's why the right view at the top of the Noble Eightfold Path. So I think this is a very important chain to understand. View, the way we view the reality, it leads to desire, action, character, and life. So what I'm going to do now is to really talk about these few points before we again enter into discussion, is to understand philosophy deeply. According to the Greek tradition, the philosophy is about love. Philosophy, the word itself, philo is of course, love, and sophy is of course wisdom. Love of wisdom is philosophy. And in some of the tradition, there is also scope for, examination of life. There is this Oracle of Delphi where it is written, know thyself, know yourself. That's also the beginning of the philosophy. But in Buddhist tradition, the philosophy is about diagnosis, knowing, about therapy, and about transformation. The philosophy cannot but transform the way you look at the world, the way you look at the life, the way we live. And therefore, the elements of Buddhist, tradition, philosophical tradition lies in diagnosis, therapy, and transformation. So, why view matter? Now, I'm going to give you some examples why view matters, and the views becomes our way of life. This is a very important connection. If we have michhaditi, our life will be, michha life. So you see what, the connection that I'm trying to bring here is this: why view matters. If I believe wealth will make me permanently secure, I will desire more acquisition, more protection, more comparison. And I will become anxious, possessive, defensive, restless. I'm not saying that the wealth is wrong. What I'm saying is, if we begin to see that there is a permanent security in wealth, if I begin to see that there is a permanent security in relationship, if I begin to see, I believe that there is a permanent security in power or in status, If I believe that, then, I will desire more of it, more protection, that, somebody should not take it away. And then I will compare it with others. They have the less of it, they have more of it, right? And I will become, because of that, I will become anxious, possessive, defensive, and restless. So a false view becomes a way of life. That is why the view is important. So just to give you an example, to make it a point, to make this point clear to you, this is a very beautiful example, the poisoned water example. So before, I know that the glass holding the water holds also poison. The water looks desirable. Thirst moves towards it before knowledge. After knowledge, you learn it's poison, desire collapses. Right? So this is very important, that when we know the reality of something as it is, then our view about it changes. And this is a very beautiful example. I found it very interesting that, we want to drink water, but if we know that, we thirst. Well, by the way, the word Trishna comes from, the desire, the word comes from, you know, uh, thirst for water. That's what we feel. We feel deep thirst for water, and we become very restless. So that is the nature of the desire. That's why the Buddha word used the word Trishna and Tanha. So you see, once we know the reality of it, something that, the nature of it is like that, then, our desires about that object collapses. So perception, knowledge, and desire changes. And the right view, as we are talking about the Buddhist philosophy, is all about attaining the right view. And right view, as we have seen, leads to right living. So right view is not mere opinion. If we repeat something forever, it is not going to bring any change in our life. Even if we know the Tripitaka by heart, we know all the Buddhist formula by heart, we know it correctly, that's not going to make much change. What is going to make change is the right view. I see so differently that my desire and action begin to change. So the Buddhist philosophy, as I said, is a philosophy in action. It's a philosophy that is aimed at, not temporary relief. That is aimed at changing our total view. And our total view, as we know that our total view matters, because, our view leads to our way of life. So it's not about Buddhist philosophy, is not about just mere opinion, not repeating certain terms. In Buddhism, knowing must become seeing. We should be able to see it. So let's look at it very, very clearly. And I think we should reflect at this point. Think of one thing you once desperately wanted, and why do you no longer want it? Because, in our lives, it happens all the time. Sometimes we want something very badly, and after some time, we don't want it. So think of one thing you once desperately wanted, and why do you no longer want it? So let's look at this. This is very interesting. You got a question? At some point of time in our lives, we wanted something badly, and then, our perception changed, and we didn't want it. We all have such experience. So how do we reflect on this? This is a time to reflect. You understood what we were talking about?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay, go on if you want to respond.
Yes, please go on the session. And after that, we will have interaction session.
No, but this is a reflection, because I structured the classes in such a way that, I'm not going to just throw the ideas. What we are going to do
Okay.
is we are going to reflect. So we are,
Yes.
as I said, that the Buddhist philosophy begins with our experience of life. It's not abstract. It's not something that is, we are not going to theorize something in abstract. We are going to look into Buddhist philosophy as to how we live, how we behave, so that, and what is, how our life will be informed by the right view. So, the question is, sometimes, we might have desired something, and then we had some kind of a change, and we no longer wanted it. So what is, do we have such some experiences like that?
Yeah, generally it happens.
Hmm.
Uh, he- Either they try for the best, their efforts will double,
Hmm.
they will double the efforts to achieve that, or they will say, यार ये अपने बस की बात नहीं छोड़ो इसे.
Hmm.
So these are the two reflections I think we get.
Because we didn't get it, we left it, right? That's what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Or the efforts are not up to that level to achieve that or to get that one.
Right. So we realize the impossibility of getting that thing, right?
Yes.
Okay. And because we realize the impossibility of getting that things, your perception changed and you didn't want it, right? That's what you want to say?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Either first he will try to double his efforts to
Okay.
achieve that.
Okay.
And if even though if he finds that it is difficult to get or to achieve that things what is up to his expectation, then he will say कि नहीं यार जाने दो छोड़ो इसे. That is the one reflection to that.
Mhm. Good. Any other person? I think while we talk about this, I would like you all to reflect back on your lives so that, whatever we discuss becomes very personalized. It doesn't remain an abstract theory, right? It has to reflect back on our lives. So a lot of times we desire something, we want something, and then our perception change, and we no longer want it. So what I'm trying to tell you here is that our perceptions matter, our view matters, because our views ultimately leads to how we live. And if our views are right views, and we are going to see how we can cultivate the right views and how that can bring a radical change in the way we live our lives. So I think a lot of you, some of you at least, might be having those examples that you wanted something badly, some status, some relationships, some power, and then you realize that no, you know, it's not what it is. So, therefore I don't want it. So I think these are the questions that we need to bear in our minds. So anybody has anything to offer on this, or should we move on? Okay, then let me go to the presentation. We will finish your presentation. Okay. So we have seen this, then we have gone through this, we have finished this, then this. So this is what we were reflecting, and I think over the week, please reflect on these things that because these are going to be very transformative exercises. So think of one thing you once desperately wanted. Why do you no longer want it? What is the reason? So this is a reflection exercise that I think we need to carry throughout the week, and then we can talk. So the first noble truth, let's revisit it again, that suffering is not only pain, it's vulnerability of conditioned life. So it is not mere pain. The Buddha says that, the pain is there. Suppose, for example, if we have a toothache, we suffer. If our body is hurting, that's a pain, and we cannot get rid of that. So suffering is not only pain, it is a vulnerability of conditioned life. So this prevents the common misunderstanding that Buddhism is simply pessimism. Because the more we talk about suffering, we begin to see that it's all Buddhism is pessimistic. There is nothing we can do about suffering, but of course there is a lot we can do about suffering, and therefore we need to look at the Four Noble Truths, that particularly the first noble truth, as suffering is not only pain, it's the vulnerability of conditioned life. Because the life is conditioned, we are vulnerable. Because the life is conditioned in such a way that we become vulnerable to suffering, and that's why there's a very deep reflection on that. So I think this is a very important sort of slide that we have to understand suffering, the 4 levels of suffering in terms of uh, pain, and we all have that. We all have suffering in terms of pain, in terms of illness, hunger, and injury. We all have experienced that, all of us. Then we have emotional suffering in terms of what is called fear, grief, anxiety. So that's very important that we all have to understand that there is an emotional layer of suffering. Then there is a existential level of suffering, the fact that everything can be lost. And I think this is a very interesting level of layer of suffering. And the final and very important layer of suffering is nothing is independent. Nothing in the world is independent. We are, as it were, at the mercy of the paticca samutpada, and we are going to look into that. So these are very interesting way to look into. So the first layer that we all know, dukkhata dukkha, it's a pain, illness, hunger, and injury. If we are hungry, we suffer. We all know that. If we are injured, if something goes wrong with the body, inscrutable pain, we suffer. Illness, we of course know that we suffer. Then, sometimes we have this fear, sometimes grief, somebody around us dies, then, grief, then sometimes we have this very anxious state of minds, emotional layer, and the nature of the existence is that everything can be lost in a snap of finger. So, that's the existence, that's the nature of the existence. It's so unpredictable. And then there is another level. The nature of the reality is that there is nothing independent in the world. And this is a very deep insight that we are going to look into in the course of our 10 sessions. Nothing is independent. But once we grasp this, that I am not independent, I am dependent on so many things, then our suffering, the intensity of suffering become very, very less. So the fourth layer is the deepest philosophical layer, the metaphysical level. And if we understand the reality at that level, there is a change in our perception, there is a change in our view, and that informs the way we live our lives. So that's why metaphysics as an ethics is what we will be talking about. So we begin with this. We keep this mind in terms of the 4 layers of suffering: pain, emotion, existence, and metaphysical. So let's go deep into that. Pain versus metaphysical suffering. So a pain, as we know, a toothache, fever, hunger, injury, it hurts directly. So the Buddha called it the first dart. And then there is a second dart. So what is the second dart? Metaphysical suffering. Every conditioned thing depends on conditions outside itself. Nothing commands its own existence. That doesn't mean we are helpless. We can do a lot about our lives. But this is very important to understand. Every conditioned thing depends on conditions outside itself. Nothing commands its own existence. Now, in Nagpur, there is so much of temperature. Sometimes it goes 46, 47. We cannot do anything about it. At this moment, maybe in the future, if we plant more trees or, whatever. But because, it's conditioned thing, it depends on the condition outside itself. Nothing commands its own existence. Buddhism asks us to look beneath feeling into structure. So we have to look into the structure. So we have to look into the structure of our minds. We have to look into the structure of our experiences. We have to look into the social structures. We have to look into, structures if we have to really, really, deal with suffering at that level. So you see, the 4 layers are very important: pain, emotion, existence, and conditioned reality, metaphysical suffering. So unless we go deep into that, beneath our beneath our feelings, beneath our pain, beneath our emotions, unless we touch the reality at that level, and Buddhism is asking us to go to that level so that we understand it very deeply. So just to give you an insight into a dependent person, for example, us. So a lot of, we are dependent on our body. If we eat well, if we have a nutritious food, we have a good body. If we, sometimes it depends on genes. Sometimes it depends on climate and labors of others. If other people have made our life easy, then we no longer feel that much pain. So our body is dependent on food, genes, climate, labor of others. Then, of course, the language, our parents, our society, culture, school, history, they all build up our personality, isn't it? The society in which we born, the school we went to, our education, our parents, our friends, our history, they, make us who we are. And then, of course, desires like memory, advertising, caste, class, family, they all condition us. Sometimes we have traumatic memories. This advertising tries to pull us away, is trying to, divert our attention. Of course, caste, in Indian context, class, family. And, of course, moods. Sometimes we don't get proper sleep. So, how we feel the world depends on, our moods, hormones, of course, hormones, weather, insult, success. These all also on different, moods we experience life. So where is the completely independent person? Where am I completely independent? I am entwined with the world around me. My body is, dependent on food, genes, climate, labor of others, the culture in which I'm born, desires, and of course the moods. So this is the hidden contradiction. Reality is impermanent, conditioned, dependent, changing. And human demand, this is what we demand. Make me permanent, make me secure, complete, untouchable. Untouchable not in the sense of caste, in terms of nobody can touch me. That's another meaning of the word untouchable. As in the American sense, untouchable, nobody can touch, beyond everything. So this is what is the hidden contradiction. The reality is impermanent, conditioned, dependent, changing, but we demand permanent, that everything should be permanent, nothing should change. There should be perpetual security. I should be complete. We can be never complete, perfect, and I should be above everything. So the reality is imperfect. Our demand for permanence, we demand for permanence, then we frustrate and suffering. This is a very simple, hidden contradiction in our lives. And I think this is a very important slide that we have to bear in our minds. So just to give you an example, modern example, number one, consumerism. There is a new object, some new object comes, say for example, a very enchanting mobile. There is an, advertisement for a very interesting equipment, say for example, a mobile. We are excited. Yeah, we want it. Then, we get habituated to it. Restlessness, then another object appears. Just to give you an example of mobile, there was a Nokia mobile, and now we have come to a very different range of mobile. And, we do, who knows what is going to be the next. So the object is not the problem. That is what we have to understand. The objects will appear in the world. In our sensory field, a lot of objects will appear. That is not a problem. The fantasy of permanent satisfaction is the problem. That is the problem. Okay. Then social media, we post something and then we wait who likes it, who doesn't like it. We want validation for that, whether what we have done. Then we compare. Oh, do they have more followers or do I have more followers? Do they like more of their stuff or more of my stuff? You see? And there is an anxiety. Just these modern examples. So recognition becomes a craving machine when identity depends on it. So you see, I told you that even our we try to seek identities to run away from the sufferings, and we want recognition. So just to look at this modern example, recognition becomes a craving machine when identity depends on it. Then modern example 3, status. I will finally be secure and recognized. I'm a big this, I'm a big that, but status create fear for fall, comparison, defense, restlessness. The higher the pedestal, the greater the fear of fall. You see, the higher we try to, there is a very important term now in psychology, status anxiety. Very anxious about our status. And it has become a modern psychological problem that, we always want to know who I am compared to who they are. And, maintain the status. It's a big problem, status anxiety. So then if we look at the modern institutions and dissatisfactions, we know advertising, you are incomplete without this. There are a lot of advertisements saying that if you are having black tone of your skin, then there are advertisements there, you'll become fair, you will become lovely. There are a lot of advertisements, if you eat certain kind of a food, you will be better than, what we are. And, they'll try to make us feel that we are incomplete, that without having this, you are incomplete. Then there is, of course, a modern day problem of consumer capitalism. Our restlessness is profitable. There is of course, digital platform, our attention, it's called attention economy, attention market. The more they capture our attention, the more they monetize it. And then, of course, status culture, comparison becomes identities. What I wanted to do is try to make our course very modern so that, it's not, we are going to look into the ancient sort of the, philosophy and going to see how it applies to our modern day-to-day life. Because we are living in a very different milieu. We are in a very different context. There is a rampant advertisement which was not there before. There is consumer capitalism which was not there before. Then there are digital platforms who are always trying to drag our attention out, and there is, of course, status culture. So what modern institutions profit from human dissatisfaction? This is a question that we all have to discuss. What modern institutions profit from human dissatisfaction? So I'm just not going to take a lot of time now, but let's dwell upon this question. What modern institutions profit from human dissatisfaction? How do we suffer? How is our suffering little bit different from, how, the people used to suffer in the ancient times or in the medieval times? Anyone would like to reflect on that? Do you think that our lives are, same as the lives of the people before 100, 200 years back?
It's keep on changing, no?
It keeps on changing, right?
Yeah.
So do you think that, the problems of advertising, the problem of
Yeah, everything. The changing scenario, everything comes into no.
right,
That ignorance always capitalist, no?
right,
Either in the advertising age or non-advertising age also.
right,
Everything, every time in all along,
right,
the unknowns of the history, the ignorance is the capitalist and exploited and make use of power.
right, 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 right.
When people are enlightened, no, or educated or something, some awareness, no.
Hmm.
So when myself limited awareness, no, how can I'll be exploited by others?
Mhm.
How can I be trapped into other things?
Right, right, right,
But
right.
we can the age of trap cannot be avoided. Even if you are using phone, you are using the platform. No,
Mm.
one way. See, always there. Construction and destruction is there. No, from the pre-history still and futuristic also.
Mhm.
Construction always destruction. But how the human being utilize the platform it in the constructive manner.
Right, right, right.
Now we
Yeah.
are, see,
Yes.
people used to say those days drama is spoiling the society.
Mhm.
Okay. And then cinema is spoiling the society. And then politics is spoiling the society.
Mhm.
So how it is some spoiling? The
Mm.
one group of people utilizing.
Mm.
Uh, those who are gaining
Mm.
is not suffering. That
Right.
those who are not utilizing, no,
Mm.
the end user not getting into no
Mm.
profit, then we can classify it as a suffered
Right, right.
class. So in the current era is digitalized,
Mm.
high tech, hyper capitalism.
Mm.
Those things scenario boundless scenario change, no,
Right,
throughout
right,
world.
right, 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 right.
So how we are, even if the Gen Z
Right.
they're achieving some in the perspective.
Mm.
Our side, no, this is wrong.
Mm.
So always dichotomy is there, no,
Mm.
good and bad,
Right.
correct and wrong. It is
Mm.
there. So today, digitalized advertising exploitation is going on. It is there.
Mm.
The thing is state of ignorance.
Right.
How much of state of ignorance, how much of awareness given. That is thing.
Right, right,
Thank you.
right,
Thank
right. Good, 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 good. No, this is a very good reflection. And what I wanted to bring to your notice is, how we live in a different world, but at the same time, this world is markedly different from the world that the Buddha lived. And it's nobody can imagine the world today the way it is, the way we are locked in the screen of our mobile, all the time scrolling, or chatting, or whatever that is. It's a very different drag on our attention. There is an attention economy which tries to bring our attention out. And of course, we know advertisements so rampant. Even if we walk on the streets, we see a lot of things which are dragging our attention to asking us to be perfect human being, have a perfect body, have a perfect skin, and so on and so forth. So there is so much of expectation in terms of uh this modern day conditioning. I'm not saying it's good or bad. We are just talking about the view, and I'm going to show in a minute why this discussion matters to what we are going to arrive at in terms of the conclusion. So let me if there are no other reflections, I will go back to the presentation, and we will for next 10 minutes we'll talk, and I think the next 10 minutes we will have a discussion before we end our class for today. So let me go to sorry, it doesn't. Okay. So we were on this slide, modern institutions and dissatisfaction. So what modern institutions profit from human dissatisfaction? This is a question that we can reflect on. So why, Buddhism is not pessimism? Why Buddhism is something which is very extraordinary in the human history is because pessimism says life is suffering and nothing can be done. That's what pessimism is all about. While Buddhism says suffering has causes, causes can be understood, conditions can change. I think a very deep, look into what the Buddha says in terms of the Four Noble Truths are radically optimistic because they are causal. Now, this word causal is very important, and we are going to look into this word in depth in the coming sessions. Causal means linked, one thing leading to another. It's not that there is a permanent stuff in the world which is never going to change. And because things change, our suffering can also change. Because the suffering has causes, causes can be understood, conditions can change. And the Four Noble Truths are radically optimistic because they are causal, very important. And we are going to look into these very interesting ideas of causality, that how one thing leads to another, how that thing leads to another thing, and how that forms a chain of suffering, and how we can break that chain of suffering through clear seeing, through inquiry, through philosophizing. So I think this is a very interesting, thing to look into. Buddhism is also not about escapism. We are not going to escape into some kind of an abstract domain. Okay, we are not going to avoid reality. Escapism is all about avoiding reality. Buddhist philosophy is all about face reality more directly than ordinary life wants to. We have to confront the reality. We cannot run away from the reality. And I think this is a very, very important point. Buddhists are not pessimistic. Buddhists are not escapist. We face the reality directly. We don't run away from the reality. We don't speculate. We experience the life. If there is suffering, we experience suffering and look deep into that. We inquire deep into that. We try to find out the causes, the conditions that have led to this arising. So the only way out is through seeing clearly. That is the only way out. And what we studied today, this is the core spine from lesson 1 is suffering, craving, misperception, reality, and freedom. So everything that we are going to study in the future classes, which are going to be very interesting. We are going to, there are 10 classes, and they are going to help us to go deep into a lot of these ideas that we have discussed in terms of what is suffering, craving, misperception, very interesting topic as to how we misperceive the world, then reality itself, and then of course freedom. So these are very interesting ideas, and I'm going to draw from a lot of great philosophers of the past, and we are going to have a very interesting course. So before we end our class, these are some of the questions that I would like you to think about. Why does Buddhism begin with suffering? So any ideas why does Buddhism begin with suffering? Any ideas?
Yes.
Why does Buddhism begin with suffering?
Knowledge, sir.
Huh?
Knowledge.
Knowledge, okay.
No.
Hmm.
We counter the problem, no?
Okay, to end the suffering, right?
Yeah.
That's why Buddhism begins with suffering, because we
Yes.
want to end the suffering, right?
Mm.
Okay. Any other
Counter the problem.
reflections? Because suffering is very tangible experience. When we suffer, it's not us, we are not feeling in abstraction, we feel it. Right? That is the beginning, when it's the experience that hits us directly. It's not an idea. It's not speculation. When we suffer, we suffer. And we all suffer. Right? So Buddhism begins with the reality of our experiences. That's why Buddhism begins with suffering. You understand?
Moreover,
You understand this point? Yes.
yes. Moreover, he classifies first it is suffering is there. That means people who don't know whether suffering is there or not. That is a
Yes.
problem.
Yes.
That's what he is classified as. The first point is suffering is there.
Yes. Very good. Very good point. Because a lot of people, they suffer, they run away. They run away to the status. They run away to.
Basically and essentially, whether what is this? When I am facing some problem, no, I don't know that whether suffering is there. And even if they're facing that pain, no, I don't think that suffering is there. Our problem is there.
Right.
That is what he is categorized. Suffering is there. So people who don't know, most of the people, almost the people don't know. Suffering is there.
Right.
And that is the problem. So every sphere, the four classification, no, why he is classified four, no, that is in-depth, fathom oriented.
Very, very
so
beautiful.
The basic things we don't know, no, whether I don't know suffering is there, no, how can I understand other problem?
Yes.
There is a problem. Okay, please go there.
Oh, that's very beautiful, this thing. And there is another very interesting take on that. The Buddha didn't call suffering bad. He said that that's the nature of the existence. He didn't say that suffering is bad. He said, if we have to word Aryan noble truth, he said that's a very lofty truth. We don't have to feel bad that, I'm suffering. There is suffering. And I have to know the suffering. I have to know the cause and condition of suffering. So Buddha is not ennobling the suffering. What he's saying that, there is suffering. It's in a fact that we all suffer this way or that way. So let's look at what is it. Right? So let's look into the second recall. What is the difference between pain and metaphysical suffering? These are just a reflection. I'm not asking you to answer this question. These are like, the pointers to our, to make us think more. So, we talk about pain, we talk about emotions, we talk about, we usually talk about metaphysical suffering. So, what is the difference between pain? So, I think pain is obvious that we all have sometimes toothache or body ache, injuries and all. But metaphysical suffering is about, is expecting, which cannot be ever attended. You cannot have something permanent. The objects are going to change. The problem is not with the objects. Sorry. So I think this is very interesting thing that we have to look into. Sorry about that. So anybody has anything to say on this? What is the difference between pain and metaphysical suffering? Then what does metaphysics as ethics mean? That we have to look into. And then these are the questions I'm going to put in the group so that we can discuss. Why does correct perception change desire? What is hidden contradiction at the center of human life? We have talked about these. Which modern institutions profit from dissatisfaction? we have also looked into this a bit. So this is a homework for you. We have to reflect on 3 points. What do you think would permanently secure your happiness? Describe one instant where change in perception had led to, less suffering. Where do you see the search for permanence in modern society? So these are the reflection points that I'm going to put in the group that we can think about. And I'm going to put some reading in the group so that we all begin to read something. And before next Sunday, observe one moment when perception changed, desire. Whatever we desire, but our perception changed and we no longer wanted it. So next lesson is going to be on theory and practices of no self. And I hope this is going to be a very interesting session. If suffering is linked to how we see reality, what is the most important thing we misperceive? So the most important thing that we misperceive is our own selves. So we are going to look into that in the second lesson. And this is the closing sentence for today. The Buddha's discovery was not that life contains suffering. His discovery was that suffering is connected to how we see reality. That was what the Buddha's greatest discovery. He said that, why we suffer because we do not perceive the reality. His discovery was that suffering is connected to how we see reality. So therefore, liberation begins not with belief, but with seeing. And that is what this course is all about. That's what we're going to look into in the upcoming session. So let's deliberate a bit and we will end in another 5 minutes. Okay. So anybody has anything to say before we end our class today, session today?
No, Mangesh, one small request. Some of us, they don't understand English. So
Yes.
if it can be a mix of Hindi as well as English, that will work.
Okay. Because some of them join from also South India. Let's see how we do it.
Absolutely.
We will do it. How we do it, we will try to see. There is a group. So I recommend that, you also discuss in the group throughout the week because it's not just
Right.
one class. I want you to have an immersion into what we are doing. So
Right.
have a reflection on the questions, think through it so that, it becomes a complete, it's not just 1 week event that we deliberate for 1.5 hours and we forget, right? So
Absolutely. Yeah.
we make it a part of our lives. And so, these are all questions that are there and we will be looking at them. I'm going to share the presentation in the group and we'll see what we can do. Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So
Okay, thank you very much.
see you next week and lovely to see you all. Thank you so much. Jai Bhim, Namo Buddha. Hello, anybody? Manish ji?
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you,
bye.
Mangesh.
Thank you.
Good day
It's a
to all.
good beginning.
Okay, good. Thank you.